Good afternoon. Sorry I had to duck off in the middle of the day. We, always have HR things that pop up when you don't quite expect them. But thanks for all staying along. And it's always hard when you have to follow something exciting like golf. And in the last session of the day. But basically my goal today, or my aim today, is to communicate a lot of the products and services that are currently in the market that providers can access, that employers can access. I sometimes think there's actually too much in the market and there's too many layers. Very often David and I will talk, David from Local Jobs will talk about, you guys have got it and you're the state government, and you guys have got it and you're the federal government, and local government's in there a bit too. And I generally think people often get confused around where they need to go, who they need to talk to, and it becomes very complicated that it's just lay down and say it's all too hard. So part of what I want to do is demystify some of the programs and products that are out there, but also call on people who are the influencers in the room to give some really specific directions to people around where they need to go to. Don't just give them a website link. Don't just ask them to navigate pages and pages, because as we just heard, you've got to get 3 pages to get a good news story about Toowoomba at the moment. That is not a good representation of our community at all. But we actually need people to come here, but they need to know that they are connected very quickly to the community. I was interested in Jen's stats earlier around how many jobs are word of mouth. So we have been endeavouring to work quite a lot with our migrant community in our department. I always tell stories, so I don't stick to scripts, or I have PowerPoints that my staff prepare for me, and I never stick to them, so I apologise for that. But something that's been really interesting is I have had to really change my attitude around how we work with people. So my attitude probably in the past was, we have lots of programs, all we need to do is send people there, and they'll come flocking to it, and it's free, and it's a great opportunity, and well, no, that doesn't work. And we've got all these jobs there, and we've got all these employers there, and we have people seeking jobs. Why aren't they connecting? Because we've got all these programs. It doesn't work. So we've had to really sit down and think, why doesn't it work? And I honestly have come to the conclusion that we have removed the human element. We've really removed the true, genuine hand-holding, baton passing effect that we can have as people in the community. We're very quick to refer someone on, show them something, job done, or sit down and we've got a caseload to manage and we can give you 10 minutes, job done, tick that box. We've actually removed the human element. So I decided that, I better start living what I'm preaching. So we, interestingly with the migrant community, I'll go back to a story about the migrant community. You'll have to keep me on time, by the way. So I can with you last. Yeah. Very well. The migrant community, I had an assumption that people who come to us from the Middle East, I'll use the Middle East because that's the community I deal with the most at the moment. The people who come to us from the Middle East, number one, they know they get a job at 15 in the Middle East. They know what an electrician is. They know that you have to have a trade licence to be a builder. They know that you have to have a gas licence to be a plumber. No, they don't. The reality of someone living in the Middle East is you do primary school. If you're okay, you go to high school. The mark of success in the Middle East is you then finish high school, you go to university, you become a professional, and your first job is at the age of 23, 24. There is no such thing as a trade. In those countries, they don't have an apprenticeship traineeship system. It's British. So if you go to high school and then you don't go to university and you go off and you are a builder, you're a labourer of building. You're a labourer of painting. You're a labourer of motor mechanics. And you don't turn up in this country with your Certificate 3 trade qualification as a trade mechanic. You don't turn up with your boiler making qualification. So what we have is we have a whole plethora of people who have been welding for 20 years. They can out-weld Australians. But because they don't have the special piece of paper and they haven't ticked all of our boxes, employers don't even consider them. So for me, that was a bit of a, I didn't realise that, folk didn't have trades in their country. I didn't realise. When I talk to a migrant family and I say, oh, get a school-based apprenticeship, they go, oh, that means they're a failure. Because it means that we can't go to university, it means you've got to work early in life, it means, that I as a parent can't support them. No, in Australia, get a job early. Learn the mental skills that you're referring to in the last presentation around, those trajectory of being an adult in the workplace, turning up on time, all those life skills, we see that as valuable. The other thing I haven't appreciated is the influence of families. So every job that I've had, I don't think one of my bosses ever met my mother and father. They wouldn't have cared less who my grandparents were, let alone who my aunties and my uncles and everything were. It's the same with our Indigenous communities. Unless we engage the families and unless we engage the influencers, we can employ people, we can offer them a whole heap of money and benefits. If the families aren't on board, they won't stay in the job. So we've had to change tack. So we ran all these migrant information sessions and people half-heartedly came. We had some small groups. I would have said that our success of people coming was limited, but the impact was great. So one of the biggest benefits of running these migrant information sessions is a young lady turned up. Some of you all know this story. She's 29, a lady from Syria, a Yazidi lady. She has 5 languages. She has a Bachelor of IT Telecommunications Radio specialisation. Would be fantastic working in Kabbalah with IT, telecommunications, radar, systems, whatever. Couldn't get a job, couldn't get an interview, couldn't even get a look in anywhere. So she was using her time volunteering around town. She turned up at our migrant information sessions and walked up and said, I'm here to help volunteer. There are a lot of people who will come, their language will be limited, I'll translate for you. So we got to know her a little bit and I said to her at the end of it, I don't need an IT telecommunications specialist in my department, but I really need someone who can interpret for me. I really need someone who can translate all of our documents. I really need someone who can get me into the community. I really need someone who will be my influencer into that community. Interestingly, within about a month, my office turned into a recruiting agency site. It was hilarious. We had about 30 phone calls of people saying, we've given Aisha a job, I want a job. Can you give me a job? Suddenly we were trusted because we had employed her. So we were taking all these phone calls, her and I sitting in my office, fixing resumes, interviewing people. Her and I are driving around town. She can't drive. So we're driving around town. She's going to interviews with people. She's going to medical appointments with people. She's helping them translate so many things around life. Just the life of what people don't know. Why do I need a tax file number? What's my superannuation account? How is that different to this? How do I interpret a pay slip? All the very basics of things. And it was really quite funny. After she'd done a few interviews, she'd come out and she'd say to me, I just have to tell you the truth. Some of his answers, we took a guy out to Wagner's for a interview to be a welder. And she got in the car and she said, well, some of his answers weren't very good, but I changed them. I said, oh. And she said, and then I got him outside and I told him that wasn't a good answer and this is what you got to do or whatever. He got a job, which is hilarious. And I thought, wow, just her understanding the Australian workplace culture was the thing that is most valuable. It isn't necessarily a course, a program, a qualification. It's people understanding how Australians work. We are unique. Every day she asks me, what's foot in the door mean? What's on all the ears mean? Every day there's something, even in our mandatory training as a government department, there's so much slang. But one of our staff had to sit there and explain to her our poor English. And they're the things that we don't appreciate. We've lived here our whole life, but these are all the challenges that people have. So we really decided to take a human approach, a genuine human-centred approach. So far, 17 people have found a job. That was in about 8 weeks. So now our role is to follow them up. Are you still in the job? Three of those jobs fell over because the migrant person didn't understand the questions the employer was asking about their visa. It's as simple as that. Because if you come here on a humanitarian visa, that's different, and you don't have the 100 points of ID, and it's things that just derail it very quickly. So that isn't, the interesting thing is DESBT, this isn't our core role. So I'll tell you what we've done with that work now, and I'm hoping I can encourage you to engage with what we've set up around that. But I will get to the slides. A little bit around, Jenny's covered off a little bit of this. This is all off workforce participation and local place-based solutions. But the key areas that the government is focused on is educate, connect and attract. So I'll just explain a little bit around what we currently have that fits into these categories. 33 actions are coming up out of the workforce strategy. They're putting in an extra $70 million over the next 3 years. But, the reality is in the state of Queensland, the taxpayer already spends $1.2 billion a year on vocational education and training. I don't understand why we've got a skills shortage. $1.2 billion a year in training. There's a disconnect somewhere. So I'm always asking that question, what is the disconnect from what the training's happening to what employers want? Where's the disconnect from what training providers are training to what the industry wants? Where are those really solid partnerships where an industry says to a training provider, I will employ your graduates if you can deliver this with this context? There's a gap there. The employers who are working with training providers now that are doing it have very, very good employment outcomes. So that's a piece of work around talking to when you are selecting a training provider, working with them to get what you want as an employer. The other things that they are looking at is there's a Workforce Connect Fund, and I know Jenny and Lauren have put in a fantastic application around a work experience model, which is designed to put some sort of process or some sort of system around how employers can engage young people or anybody into work experience. Because work experience has kind of gone out the door a bit. Those opportunities of just give me a go, just let me get in the door and work with me for a week or two, a lot of that's kind of gone. So a way of reinvigorating that. The network of industry advisors, the ladies are in the room now, that you've met before. But at the moment, we need more employers to access these services. Gateway to Schools programs are ongoing and expanding. Micro-credentialing and pre-apprenticeships. There is a plethora of micro-credentials and pre-apprenticeship programs that young people, anybody, can access. But do they? Don't know. Rural and remote workforces, there's more partnerships happening to strengthen those. I know DESBT has one, a workforce participation fund through our department to assist with out in the Western Downs, identifying people for the health sector. Similarly, St George has an officer out there identifying workers for businesses. So there are people in place to assist us with some of these challenges. More support around apprentices and trainees. I know my team have got targets around retaining more people in apprenticeships and traineeships and how they can intervene and mediate in many instances around certain things. School partnerships, Department of Education is actually engaging an officer in regional offices to work with industry from a school perspective. So the whole investment into this plan isn't just DESBT, it does involve other agencies. And similarly, the multicultural area of our department are looking at improved outcomes for migrant refugees. So they've got some set pieces of work that we're all working collaboratively on. To give you an idea around all of the things around the 1.2 billion, I am more than happy for anyone in the room, if you want us or one of our staff to come and sit down and go through this with you in detail, please let us know today, because I'm just skimming the surface. But I'm more than happy to come down and step any influences through exactly how this works, so you know all the offerings and you can direct people really well. But we have all of our certificate funding, higher level skills that I believe there was a question before around what are employers doing to upskill their staff. High level skills, that is funded. There are provisions there for people to do that. User choice, traineeships and apprenticeship. We pay for people to undertake their training with their apprenticeship and traineeship. Free apprenticeships under 25. So if you're under 25, you don't pay any fees. There's lots of opportunities there. TAFE still have fee-free TAFE, where people don't pay any student contribution. Job Trainer Fund, again, that was a suite of small programs, of skill set programs that are free. And vocational education in school, but in schools, there's second chance opportunities through TAFE now that people can access. So there's a whole plethora of programs there, and you can find this all out on the Skills Gateway. But again, I don't want to send people to navigating websites. Please contact our staff, one of the people here in the room, or myself, and we will come and talk you through it all and make it really simple to navigate. Skilling Queenslanders for Work. Trudy mentioned this before. We have really good outcomes in this region around Skilling Queenslanders for Work, and that is on the back of some of our really great providers. DISCO run a Get Set for Work program that achieves the best outcomes in the state. Oh, Kim, hello. So I'm going to say that Beverly pinches that glory and says it's because of her. But it's not. It's because of the great work that Kimberly and Mike do, and they get 73% outcomes of young people who are really hardcore young people, and they are very disadvantaged, but they take them, they work with them, and they have an incredibly solid human-centred approach. That 73% of those go on to work or another training program. That's a huge difference in our community. And they're the sort of programs that we're really looking to promote more of. They're the list of the other Skilling Queenslanders for Work programs. And again, more than happy to come and talk to any organisation around how this program works, how they could benefit from it. If you're an employer in the room, how do you potentially use some of these graduates for your business? I'll tell you a story about Dolby Welcoming Committee. They won Queensland Training Awards state category last year. Dolby Welcoming Community get 100% employment outcomes out of their Skilling Queenslanders for Work program. If they start with 14 people from a disadvantaged, migrant, challenged background, by the end of that program, 14 people have a job. And what Beth Woods did is she went to 4 employers out there. It was around the community services sector. And she said, what have I got to do for you to take these people on? You just tell me. You guarantee me that you'll take them on, and I will put all that into the course. So they asked her to put their workplace induction into the course. So they know all of these life skills of turning up, not on your phone, here's your uniform, here's your phone etiquette, here, like all of the soft skills, or I don't like that word necessarily, all the life skills that make someone a really valuable employee. So she does. She puts that into the program, and she repeat. She doesn't teach it once. It's ongoing, and all for 100% outcomes about 3 years in a row. But that's amazing. But she's done it by having a really good relationship with those 4 employers. And they work really well in partnership. They do work experience. They get to know the graduates. They deal with the issues that person's brought into the workplace. And then they'll explain that back to Beth, and then she addresses those. Very human-centred approach. But it does take time and energy, but it works. So they're the sorts of things that we're looking for. The other program we run is Diverse Queensland Workforce. We have that with Catholic Care, Multicultural Australia, and the Mulberry Project in our community. It is designed to work with migrant folk who are either skilled or unskilled to navigate the Australian workplace environment and help them get a job. Multicultural Australia is focusing more on the professional stream. So somebody who's an accountant in their homeland, somebody who may be an engineer in their homeland, all of those types of things. How do they navigate our system of compliance? Catholic Care are focusing on unskilled, what we would call people who are labourers, that type of thing. And the Mulberry Project is looking at the agriculture sector. And again, we're getting around 65% outcomes of people who are going through those programs are getting jobs. So I encourage you, if you know of people who are really genuinely looking for work, but they really need support, Skilling Queenslanders for Work, Diverse Queensland Workforce. There's many opportunities. Again, if you'd like that information, we can tell you exactly who the providers are, what they do, what their speciality is, all of those things. The other area that the government's looking at is attracting and retaining. So workforce participation is a big issue, as we were talking about. So my story about Aisha before, as that isn't something we could probably give it full justice at the time it's needed, we've now funded the Toowoomba Chamber to take that work on. So Georgie Carswell runs Business Connect, and she takes the business membership of the chamber and she talks to them around who needs workers. And then we match those roles with folk from the migrant community. One of the deals we did with her was if you take this funding on, you have to employ migrant people. So she has. She's taken on a gentleman called Fiaz. I always pronounce his name wrong, but it's Fiaz. And I'll give you an example of how it happens. Kiala Flower needed some workers. She spoke to Fiaz around this is what they're looking for. Who do you know in community? He went and found 4 people for an interview. They took the 4 people there for an interview and the person got a job. But if they were relying on a job on Seek, a job on social media, a job on Facebook, a job on, they're not looking. But they really want work. And interestingly, the person who got the job has the worst English, but the best attitude. So they're employed for the attitude and the potential, not for the skills the person was bringing to the role. I've had some interesting conversations with employers who have an expectation that the 24-year-old fully qualified boilermaker with excellent experience is just sitting outside on the sidewalk waiting to work for them. They're not there. So they need to, as an employer, think about how do I recruit for potential, not recruit for skills. The notion of we want all these skilled people, anyone who is skilled and upright breathing at the moment is working. So again, we need to, how do we capture the potential of people and then take them on that journey and motivate them and support them? We also fund DESBT in these areas around trying to create these connections with industry. In specific areas, Seamus is running information sessions and lunches and bringing employers to the table and getting kids to start thinking about, the possibilities in these industries, because they actually don't know what they don't know what they don't know. If you talk to somebody around getting a job in aged care, they immediately think, I don't want to deal with old people. There are so many jobs in aged care. There's a very small part of it that's caring for old people. There's all the infrastructure of aged care that they could easily be working in. So it's broadening their vision. The other one is around Stanthorpe Chamber, which we're actually helping businesses down there build their own capacity within their own businesses. Back to Work is another program. Whilst it's quite controversial that Back to Work doesn't apply to employers at Toowoomba, there are other, I know, you have to lasso Office of State Revenue and the Treasurer on that one. I've tried, didn't go well. But there are programs in that Back to Work suite. Bonnie Davidson, who was here before from TAFE, they have really fantastic job seeker assistance and programs. There are quite a lot of short courses that employers can do. So even though they don't get necessarily the employment subsidies to take people on, there are other benefits within that program. For businesses, these are the business supports that are there. There's a whole raft of mentoring for growth programs. We have our industry skills advisors, industry HR advisors, rural financial counsellors, business wellness coaches. See what I mean? There's a lot. Sometimes too much. But it's the endeavour to be as far-reaching and as far-offering as possible. What we need to do is for people to take this up, employers to take it up, young people take it up, any job seeker taking it up, anybody who wants to improve their career options to take this up. And the only way we do that is word of mouth, because it's advertised now. So we need the influencers in the room to actually influence people into this. So we also fund social enterprises to take on more people, like the likes of Vanguard and Ability in Toowoomba. They all receive funding of how they can buy more equipment, to take more people on, those sorts of things. So we are endeavouring to be as broad-reaching as possible. But the other story I wanted to tell you is Tilly's Crawler Parts is an organisation that's been working with Georgie for a little bit around Business Connect, and they only now want to employ migrant people. And the reason that is because whilst language is a barrier, they've had to come up with solutions of support to deal with safety, workplace health and safety. What they love is work ethic. These folk are the first to turn up. They're never on their phones. The last to leave, and their willingness to be part of the community and to just someone give them a go is huge. So I think for my department in Toowoomba or in this region, our next part of our work needs to be on working with employers. We have got some fantastic employers who have shifted in their mindset. They've really embraced the notion of diversity in their workplace. I had another organisation who had desperate for accountants, can't find accountants for love or money. I said to them, have you considered talking to Mohammed at the mosque? Because he's got 4 masters of accountants who are driving Ubers in his congregation. Oh, we don't need masters of accountants. Okay, what do you need? Well, I need bookkeepers. Okay, so what don't these masters of accountants have? Well, they don't have Australian tax. They don't have CPA, so they can't do that job. Okay, well, what part of your workforce could they, or what part of the work could they do? Can you restructure your workforce to free up your accountants by taking some of that maybe lower level book work or bookkeeping out? And can we bring people into the business that way? They immediately went to the assumption that they don't want to come here and do bookkeeping. That'd be boring for them. That's the Australian lens. So I rang Mohammed at the mosque and said, look, this company, I know you've got some accountants out there, they are looking for accountants, but these guys can't do it until they do their CPA. Would they be interested in bookkeeping? They jumped at it. Yes, anything. Get me in the door. That's what they say to me. Jenelle, get me in the door. They've got that phrase down pat. I want a foot in the door. So that's the thing. So they took them on. They employed 2 people. And what they found out after they employed them, that one of these guys has fantastic data analytics skills. But they never knew he had. So now they've been able to reshape and restructure the stuff. He's doing all their data analytics. But they were looking for an accountant with a very narrow lens. So that's the next part of what we need to do with employers, is to start talking to them about how they can diversify their workforce. How can they diversify the work? How can they split it out from our traditional roles and segmentise those pieces of work differently and use the skill sets that we have in the community? How can they bring a young person in who doesn't have a qualification but has a part of that job and a part of that skill set that they can build and enhance? So I think that's our next piece of work. I would really love it if people have got any ideas for me, if they, just say, that's a load of rubbish, challenge us so we get some really good creative thinking, because we're really keen to get that motivation into what actually works. So that's the stuff that I'm interested in. Please talk to myself and of our staff. If you know of something that has worked, something we can replicate, something you'd like to trial, pilot, I'm really receptive to hearing all that. So, have I time? Yep. Didn't expect anything different. But thank you for listening to me today. I always go off track, but I hope that's helpful information. And please come to our jobs fair, 9th of March. We still have available stalls. If you know of anybody who needs assistance with workforce planning, thinking about their workforce differently, next Monday night at the Burke and Wills. And the Skilling Queenslanders for Work session is the 8th of March, and that round closes the 31st. So please, really keen to have a yarn. Thank you.